this is Brandon Pepler again. Sorry for having been missing for some time. I've just been very, very busy, and of course, with this being summertime, my job requires me to do summer camp rituals. But it's a very enjoyable experience. Enjoyable. Sorry if it came out as endurable. But so anyway, so everything's been going pretty good, and so today is the 4th of July at the time of this recording. That's right. Independence Day 2019. Whoa, it makes you wonder. And for all of you Marvel fans out there, happy birthday to the Cap himself. But so today I'm going to be doing up a quick, I wouldn't say quick, but it's of course it's going to be an audio commentary of one of the most iconic films that of course I had grown up when I was a boy, and this is what it was like on the whole dino obsession thing with dinosaurs. So tonight I'm going to be introducing the audio commentary track from Moi of the original Jurassic Park. Now, before we get onto it, I would like you all to take a moment to pause this commentary. Then you can get yourself some snacks, something to drink, go to the restroom, do whatever, and of course, find either a copy of the film or find it live streaming somewhere, wherever you can, and I will let you know just when we're about to count down. Alright, everybody should be set right at this point, but so on my count, we will begin the flick in 3, 2, 1, bing! The Universal logo. They actually introduced this from, like, it was right at the very time of their 75th anniversary, so it's been quite a while. 93. Yeah, just a thing that's been like 36 years. Actually, no, wait, it's 26. 26. My mistake. Classic score from John Williams. So, of course, with Jurassic Park, this is like one of the most iconic books that, that was, of course, written by Michael Crichton at the very height of his book writing career. Like, of course, he was familiar with having done work like, of course, Andromeda Strain, Sphere, Westworld. So he had a very, I would say, kind of a pretty broad career in terms of, like, of course, the idea of exploration into, like, the perils of science. And Jurassic Park itself is no exception because, like in many instances, this is a story about human hubris. The very concept of humans doing something that they could when they should stop and think if they actually should be doing this kind of thing, because the very idea of dinosaurs being made, recreated from extinct DNA, and then of course having been reintroduced into the modern world, what could actually happen, right? And that's where the whole idea of the novel falls forth. But of course, now the very idea of how the dinosaurs have been, of course, been a very big threat for the park was given to the, besides this whole idea of this one engine worker that's tied in, it goes a lot deeper and it's a lot more scary because in the novel version it coincides what is called the engine incident. And of course the dates are very different because we have this film that's of course taken place in 93 at the in real time at the time of its release, just as the novel was even though it was published in 1990. The setting actually took place in August of 1989. Classic line. But so essentially, aside from this, there was also the idea of the animals escaping from the park. Like, of course, you got Compsognathus and the Velociraptor species that were how ever so subtly and stealthily ended up getting aboard these different ships and then coming to the mainland. And hence there was reports of different attacks that were happening in Costa Rica. Now the layout of Jurassic Park goes like this. So the origins, harking back to like the how the park was created, it goes a lot deeper because, given the fact that Hammond, of course, he was this so he was pretty much shown as kind of like this park builder, park creator, and that of course he had, of course, a preserve that was done in Kenya, Africa, and that he was tied in with InGen to help out with, of course, their genetics company. And of course, during this, there was also other rival companies that were, of course, competing. Because the very idea is that with genetics being a very new science, there's not like any kind of real regulation behind it. So the scientists that are going into genetics, they could pretty much do whatever they like, and they wouldn't have to do any kind of. They wouldn't really get into kind of any kind of regulation hiccup, and not be bogged down with laws and regulations based on the work that's being done. Another major difference is the presentation of this. So, the introduction of Grant and Sattler. The very idea is that, so of course, the layout here is that, of course, they're in the Badlands of Montana, and that they have discovered a new fossil, and of course, they identify it as a Velociraptor. But just so you know, if you guys have seen this movie, then of course you know the whole layout. So the relationship between Grant and Sattler, it's been presented here as that they both are essentially in some kind of relationship, given the fact how they interact with each other, and of course, just how they kind of do this kind of like almost like a flirting kind of mannerisms. But in of course, if none of you have read the novel, then the thing is with Grant is that he was, of course, a widowed man, widower, essentially, and of course he is, of course, a paleontologist, having, of course, been modeled after one of the great paleontologists, Jack Horner, sorry, Jack Horner, the kid. Funny theory. Well, I actually read about this theory about how like this may actually have a connection with Jurassic World, and that this boy would, of course, happen to be the younger version of the character Owen Grady. And that, of course, the scene that takes place is where Grant, of course, ends up planting the seed of how Grady, of course, ends up taking care of his Raptor squad. Now, going back to the relationship, so it's been revealed. So it's actually that Sattler was of course attached with Grant, have being of course a graduate, and then that of course she is sort of like a student under Grant, as opposed to being like this like in the closet lover. I mean, and I mean in the closet, not in the other way. I mean like sort of like behind closed doors, in secret. But so, and another major difference is that so you can see here is that you can actually see the major difference was that of course you know Grant has this dislike for children in this version. Sam Neill, very good actor. I actually saw a few of his films after having encountered this, and of course, he was also known for having done Hunt for Red October alongside with Sean Connery and Alec Baldwin. But he was also in Event Horizon with Lawrence Fishburne, and he was also in the Jungle Book with one of the cast from Game of Thrones. The late great Sir Richard Attenborough. What a good guy. But so John Hammond, where to go with this guy? But of course, major differences. Of course, so the of course differences. So in the novel, it's been depicted that Hammond was supposed to be like the dark side of Walt Disney. And then essentially he was, of course, having helped create the park without any sort of regard. He was just in it for the money, nothing else. I mean, he even went as far as wanting to, of course, preserve the animals in the midst of knowing that there were people in severe danger. And with that danger, there was, of course, the costs of lives. And I mean, especially his own grandchildren. You wouldn't really quite find Hammond very sympathetic in the novel. There was just no way for it. Just because, well, why would this guy end up being so completely one-track minded to the point where he just obsesses about the animals and money, as opposed to the lives of people? But so of course with Hammond in this version, you could actually tell he's a very sympathetic character and he's very warm-hearted. And in with this instance of him being shown like this, he is so of course he is a very likable guy. It's just he just was misguided from his own vision, and of course he ended up warping it because he's trying to cut corners, and that was of course the major downfall of Jurassic Park. I mean, he had good intentions, but he just ended up doing the wrong things. But so Richard Attenborough, he has been in a number of. I mean, he's been a well-known actor in the British scene, and he's been in a number of very good films, like of course some. I feel like a couple of good classes, The Great Escape and Doctor Dolittle, the classic version, and he was also in He was also in Elizabeth with the, the Kate Blanchett film. He was also in Gandhi, Chaplin, and even on Miracle on 34th Street, the remake version. But so going back to Sam Neill, I kind of backtracked a little bit because Sir Richard Edinburgh, I mean, good guy. But so the trivia was is that so Neil it had collaborated with Lena Headey for the '94 live action film of The Jungle Book. So that was like one of her earlier roles before she ended up getting so big. And even before that, she was also in, like, of course, Terminator Sarah Connor Chronicles. So Wayne Knight, another good actor. Yeah, so you may remember him from being as the one of the detectives in Basic Instinct, and he was also in Seinfeld, um, alongside Jerry Seinfeld himself. Yeah. So Louis Dodgson, the novel actually covered up more of his backstory, having been involved in, of course, sort of like this test that was done with a viral outbreak on a plane. But of course, with that, he is attached with a rival company to Engine called Biosyn. And so there was, of course, essentially there was supposed to be this kind of rivalry that was supposed to be done involving the two different companies. But, of course, the films, it's just been focused on Engine being the bad guys. But you have to look at it from, like, I mean, that's kind of like the big thing with rival companies, the idea of them kind of butting heads. And then, of course, Biosyn is the more, uh, they really had no strings attached to them. They just did whatever at the cost of lives. Jeff Goldblum, likable guy. He of course you pretty much know his career as an actor, and it's very hard to not like the guy. But so Goldblum, he's actually he's been in a number of films in his career. I mean, like, of course, you know, a number of big ones. Notably, of course, um, Independence Day. He was also in David Cronenberg's Fly remake, alongside Davis. Sorry for the stutter. And they both ended up, of course, were had a relationship at the time, and of course they even were involved together for the film Earth Girls Are Easy, which of course had Marlon Wayans and Jim Carrey. Now, so much of this film was filmed in Honolulu, Hawaii, and so that I think the island has like actually has like some shooting locations that were actually marked, so people can actually see those spots. I had a friend that I knew back in high school that actually ended up going up there, and I think he actually went to one of those spots where it actually introduced the Gallimimus when they were attacked by Rexy. Foreshadowing. That seatbelt was foreshadowing. Such beautiful scenery, you know. I mean, even that waterfall. Uh, so cool how they actually came up with this stuff. Just the very idea of, I mean, how they actually laid out all the different vehicles in terms of like their function. Like, of course, you got the gas powered jeeps for general use. High voltage! Dunder Jeep. And of course, the Japanese investors were tied in with the park, and the very idea with, of course, Jurassic Park being invested by a lot of these offshore and overseas investors makes a lot of sense in a way because, I mean, because the very idea, of course, this is like the first functioning incarnation of a Jurassic Park attraction, at least in any kind of canon. Now, I haven't seen Laura Dern. I haven't seen like a lot of her work. Like the only one I could really think of, like off the top of my head, was of course October Sky, and I mean that's a very emotional film, and she was of course a a mathematics teacher that was tied in Brachiosaurus. So now there's some bit of trivia that I picked that I heard from a game called Trespasser Jurassic Park, and so so it's been said that the Brachiosaur was like featured as like the oldest Jurassic creature in the park, and of course there's also the knowledge that of course Jurassic Park has this whole plethora of different creatures from all the different prehistoric periods. Like of course you got Triassic, Jurassic, Cretaceous, and my theory is that the reason why Hammond calls it Jurassic Park is because he probably considers it as kind of like the very like pinnacle of dinosaur history. Like, and then of course the Triassic, yeah, it's like sort of in its infancy, and then Cretaceous like it's like the very like the very bookend of the whole layout of the dinosaur's existence. The, but so the very concept of how the island was first acquired. So there's a Telltale's game story called Jurassic Park the Game. In that, of course, Isla Nublar was, of course, inhabited by a tribe of people that, of course, occupied the island. And then, of course, the Costa Rican government allowed Incheon to acquire the island, and, of course, the natives had to be relocated. And that's another thing to consider on terms of like the very history of humanity, a very dark history. The concept of relocation of an indigenous people and the destruction of their home and their culture. Multiplicity. Now this is where it gets very interesting, like the very origins of how the dinosaurs were cloned. But like so, the layout of DNA itself, it's not only associated with blood, but it can also be found in skin tissue, bone marrow, fingernails, and even hairs. So even if you have like, there's also the concept of like pieces of DNA that can be preserved over time by alternate means. So like of course besides the whole mosquito thing being preserved in fossilized amber, there's also the concept of like of course like of course in like current times it's been discovered that even fossilized bones could still have traces of DNA, and that could still be enough to consider like what kind of species that the creature really is. Well, animal really. So it seems like this is the very same mosquito that was found in the Dominican Republic, because it kind of seems like the very same shape. Well, so here is the thing that kind of really concerns me in terms of like how the dinosaurs were created using frog DNA. Wouldn't it be more logical to, of course, use DNA that was kind of connected with like descendant animals to help reconstruct the DNA sequences? Because I mean, just the very idea of incorporating a frog, you would have this risk of like, of course, like genetic mutation that could be accidental, and the animals wouldn't exactly be presented as they were. And now of course, given that there's been discovery that the dinosaurs in our world have essentially had feathers, and I mean, it could be possible that with the genetic mutation of frog DNA, it would probably make sense for the dinosaurs to be presented and having, like, of course, reptilian bodies. But so that's a theory itself. Then, of course, there was the concept of cellular growth and the replication process being faster, incorporating a specific DNA type. And that was another thing that was covered in the Telltales game. it would have been great if they ended up having tried to perhaps expand this scene a little bit, because like in the novel they introduce like the baby stegosaur inside of a nursery, because in this region of the lab, this is of course the hatchery. I mean, incredible animatronic work. I mean, so, but so the very concept, of course, like it would have been great to, of course, see what the nursery would be like. I mean, actually seeing what the baby dinosaurs would look like. I mean, like there was actually a picture that I saw in a coloring book that's tied in with Jurassic Park. And it, of course, featured a baby trike actually being held. So, I'm sorry for going back on this, but it's just the puppetry is so incredible. Stan Winston, another special effects wizard. So another thing that was covered in the novels was the idea of iterations that was tied in with the topic of chaos theory, and that Malcolm, of course, covers that intensively. I mean, such is the case with iterations that they start out small and then start to, of course, start to spread and branch out more, and it ending up creating a massive calamity. I mean, and that's that's like the very idea of iterations, that they start within like a small core, but that's when the control is lost, because if chaos isn't contained, then it expands, and that's where Malcolm explains the very concept of how barriers can be destroyed. Gotta feed them livestock. Oh, the just the way the sounds are done. I mean, that's just impressive. But so the sound design is it of course incorporate a lot of different animal sounds, and that they ended up having remixed to where they have to end up coincide with the different sounds of the dinosaurs. I mean, like the like of course different calls and like different snarls, and there's even like mating calls that were also incorporated to further the expansion of the dinosaur sounds. And that's scary to think what raptors can actually do. But like the real raptors that were presented in the novel, they were completely different because I mean they're just like the small they're like about the size of turkeys, and they weren't necessarily good solo. That's why they of course swarm in packs to take out a larger opponent for prey. But so the very concept of how Hammond was trying to create these different Jurassic Park resorts. So there's like the very idea that he wants to create more than just one. Like the one established in Isla Nublar, that was just like one of them. And then of course you got the amphitheater that was shown in Lost World. So the one presented in San Diego. But then of course Hammond also wanted to expand to Europe and even Japan. Well, because of course the idea of genetics is that it's not heavily regulated. It's a very new science at the time of this, so there was no real responsibility or strings or restraints to handle that kind of technology. And that's kind of how that's how companies are very much are, especially with how like of course with how Disney is, given that of course they made acquisitions to, like, of course, Marvel and Fox as a couple of examples, because the very idea of companies having acquired, like, classic franchises or companies, it comes down to where, like, the very idea that nothing is really sacred, because there's the idea of rebranding, repackaging, and then being sold. And that's kind of where Malcolm is kind of presenting this concept, the irresponsibility of handling something that may be awe-inspiring, but there is also the concept of the irresponsibility of with that that care for it. Mm-hmm. Too true there. Can't really expect anything. Can't really expect anything. To think that the lawyer ended up getting twisted because at first he was going up against the engine representing the investors, but now, of course, the very idea of wanting to get money. You can actually see the role reversal there. Human greed is another aspect to how Jurassic Park is. Like the very idea of how, um, you know, you know, so I actually saw a recreation of one of the tour vehicles about a few months ago. But so with the program I work with, we had a car show incorporated with our open house event in May. But so there was an actual driver that actually tried to recreate one of the cruisers, which is quite a feat itself because I mean, I mean just the way of having to try finding the right parts and trying to recreate it is very it's just a very intensive task. I mean, because you gotta find the right kind of model, the right year, and plus the right parts to recreate it. But so overall, I mean, when I saw that vehicle, it was amazing. I mean, it almost looked like the exact same thing, just was missing a few bits and pieces. But the driver who had that vehicle, he did. Samuel L. Jackson. Another good actor. That guy has been around. I think this is like the very film that kind of got attention of him. And then, of course, he ended up getting to more leading roles, like, of course, Pulp Fiction, Star Wars films as Mace Windu, Snakes on a Plane. And he was also in Die Hard with a Vengeance with Bruce Willis. And then, of course, you got him as Nick Fury in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. But so the with that, they actually took ideas from the Marvel Ultimate comics. So, now I don't know exactly if they are really spitters or not, the Dilophosaurus, but it's likely due to, of course, the genetic tampering that ended up causing the Dilophosaurus animals to, of course, inhabit that kind of feature, and that with that they had to, of course, incorporate it. Hmm. But the big thing with Nedry is that he's essentially this code monkey that ended up being put into this coding job, and that, of course, he's overworked and he's underpaid, and that's why he's essentially he sold himself out to Biosyn. but like in the words of Clayton Fiorti, Nedry was the straw that broke the camel's back, and that's another YouTuber. Clayton was of course he's done like a number of Jurassic Park lore videos, and he's very big for it, and he's even done like of course a playthrough of the Trespasser game that I had just mentioned a little earlier. But yeah, so look up Clayton Fiorti. Fiorti. Yeah, and then extinction. Think about it. Dinosaurs kill indiscriminately, either for, like of course, the case of carnivores, the need to feed, and of course with herbivores, defense. Now, one thing that kind of concerns me is why feed a goat? I mean, why feed a T-Rex a goat? But uh, but it would probably make sense because, of course, like in the novel, it was presented that Rexy was just a juvenile at the time. In the case in the film, Roberta, but you could pick and choose. But the idea is that there's supposed to be more than one Rex in that paddock, and Rexy just happens to be one of them. Yeah, so another thing about sound is like the incorporation of like the environmental sounds, the background sounds. Like there's even another YouTube series that's called like the like uh see I'm trying to remember it from the back of my head, but it deals with like the different ecologies of Jurassic Park, like the different islands and the different habitats that are associated with both Isla Sorna and Isla Nublar. Flirting. And that's another joke that's kind of been covered throughout the whole course of the film. It's like there's like memes going on around, like of course Laura Dern's mumbling that's been done in the film. I mean, you could barely even hear her at all. Like in like some of these pivotal moments, like of course the explanation of the raindrop shown by Malcolm. Messy, 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 messy. Barbasol. another role reversal was with, of course, Lex and Tim. Like, like, of course, Lex was supposed to be younger, and that, of course, Timmy was supposed to be a little bit older. But so it, I mean, I don't know. I mean, for some reason, it seems to work because like Tim being like this young boy, having dinosaurs on the brain isn't working. I mean, he is completely enthusiastic about it, but I don't know. It's for some reason it kind of works. And another thing that was different is that instead of a trike, there was a stego, so a stego that was incorporated in the novel. Just so incredible. More mastery from Stan Winston. I mean, originally Stan Winston Studios, now Legacy Effects, and then of course they've done like effects for, of course, Terminator, Aliens, and they, of course, ugh. Face change on Grant. But yeah, I didn't actually notice like, but yeah. So the when Sadler was checking out the trike's tongue, I didn't notice that. I didn't notice if there was like a blister or like something that's kind of like flaking on the tongue. Excrement, that is. Yeah, you're telling me. Now, in this, they didn't actually they didn't actually figure out what was, of course, originally done, but the very idea is that, like, so in the instance, but it was the concept of, like, of course, with the stegosaur having been ill, and now, of course, with the triceratops, it was the concept, of course, that the idea of stones that were being consumed and helping the digestive system. I mean, it just looks. The horns look very impressive. It almost looks like they were crafted from wood. I mean, but you could definitely tell it had some like wear and tear, some cracks. like the Trek had actually used them before. So much for live feed. You can actually tell it was actually played back. No neck. It's something that Grant would ask in this, but 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 yeah, it's the whole thing of character growth for Grant. Really? Uh, you could definitely see some tension there too. I mean, just seeing Grant look at Malcolm like that. I mean, you could definitely tell there's like a level of disgust, and there was like the it's like there's just something predatory about Malcolm. I mean, you know that's kind of like a bit of almost like a paradox in its own way. I mean, here is Malcolm talking about chaos, especially in terms of like the whole predatory means of chaos, and yet he has like sort of like this sort of like a predatory nature in terms of like just like the different wives and children he has. It's like he wants to marry just so he could screw. I mean like I mean I could be wrong if that's the case. Powers out. Bad place too, no doubt. Well, the lights went off. Oh, good luck. Yeah, but even so, there's always the chance of Raptors getting out. But but that's another thing that wasn't really quite covered, the motion sensors. Because another thing that was covered in the novel was the idea of the different animal populations that were steadily increasing. But that was another part that was very essential to the discovery of how the dinosaurs were essentially increasing in population because the necessity to breed. Wrong? Right? Oh, and there was like a game that was done with this too. I'm trying to get permission to access the code. You didn't say the magic word. Ah. They're screwed. Oh, yep. Back at the Tyrannosaur paddock. Bad news. Okay, but shouldn't the lights be off? Oh wait, that's right. The car batteries. There was a prop builder that actually recreated those goggles, and the amazing part is that they while they didn't have like the actual night vision mode, and just the idea that they actually light up and magnify and demagnify. And one of the interesting parts is that there is the incorporation of a an actual welder's helmet band that was added on to secure the goggles, because you could actually tell that there was this adjustment knob at the back. And I mean, maybe, I mean, I don't remember if it actually came from like a welding shield or like from a like a dust shield, but the idea is that it could be adjustable just by using like the knob in the back of the headband. Maybe. Oh, there you go. Another major difference. So Geraldo was essentially supposed to be, well, he was shown the novel to have survived, and that Ed Harris was, of course, one of the guys that worked with the park, which was shown driving one of the jeeps. But of course, they had to make Geraldo actually appear very unsympathetic, and well, yeah, given the fact that there's this lawyer that's completely greedy. Hello, Rexy. That's it's just so impressive how seamless the of how like of course they use a combination of computer animation. Like of course the moment where Rexy's head was nodding at Grant's and Malcolm's vehicle, and then it started to transition to using the CGI Rexy. But so there was a technique that was going to be used called go motion. It's like it's it's essentially um, the process involves using miniature models and then it's sort of like stop motion animation in a way. Oh, oh, that's a loud burst right there. But mm, so CGI was very new, and there were only a few instances where it was actually starting to really kick off because like 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 at the very time, like some of the breakthroughs that were done with Stan Winston. Sorry, no, like James Cameron with, of course, so, of course, with James Cameron, like those breakthroughs included The Abyss, and of course Terminator 2: Judgment Day with Industrial Light and Magic. But so like so like the big thing that actually got the dinosaurs to look like as authentic as possible in CGI was, of course, done up using methods from a previous film that was done about a year earlier called Death Becomes Her. So I've actually found this information from another YouTuber called Minty Comedic Arts, and what he does is like he does like 10 amazing facts, and and what they are is that they are retrospectives into the movies and some of the facts that ended up being connected with them. And so the effects of Death Becomes Her were like the very pivotal point to helping create the realistic computer effects for the individual dinosaurs. Talk about a mental breakdown. Oh, and that was another thing that happened. Like some of the so like one thing that was like sort of by accident was like how there were different actions done up by Rexy, the puppet of Rexy. But so because of all that rain, it ended up making her mechanisms kind of malfunction. And there was also the instances where, like, from what I heard, there was an accident involving, like, of course, the roof of the Explorer that Tim and Lex were occupying, and that it malfunctioned to where, of course, it ended up crashing right through the sunroof. But uh, so, and there's another thing that's kind of like, what's the story about the geography of a park? Like, because you would think that this was like, of course, this was supposed to be the Rex Pin, unless if that's part of the moat. Oh, there was I forgot the YouTuber, but there was like another channel actually did a recreation of the Isla Nublar park using Jurassic World Evolution. Oh, cartoon slip. But yeah, so it seemed like some of the animals featured in the park, like this Dilophosaurus, must be, from the look of it, it looks like a juvenile one. It's a girl, thank you. Your food, buddy. Think about it. The innocent little head tilt. But so the novel version is, oh, it was very gruesome. It's just that he deliberately adds some goop to his chest. But yeah, so yeah, they really turned down the the gore factor. As in the novel version, Nedry did get mauled by a Dilophosaurus, and he ended up, of course, getting gutted. of course, he ended up getting blinded, and the effects of the venom actually caused him to have like a euphoric effect. And while he's, of course, getting eaten alive, oh, there was not much he could do. He was just affected by the toxin in the venom. But so I think like a painful death is very fitting for Nedry. And, so there was of course like some games that were tied in with the release of the film, like of course the one I grew up with was the Super Nintendo version, which is kind of like this bird's eye view of like of course the park itself, and then of course the layout of the game is that you have to of course turn on the power and reset the whole system, and of course escape the island. Interesting part of the game was is that they incorporate like actual portraits of the actors and that play the essential roles. And like the moment you kind of like stand idle, there's even dinosaur facts that pop up featuring Mr. DNA. And there's of course the classic Nintendo version, and it loosely follows it, and it has like the same a bird's eye view setup. Uh, but so the games they were very fun at the time. There was even some release for Sega. Like it's like an action platformer. You can either play as a Velociraptor or as Grant. And some of it actually has like nods to like the novel, like of course the riverboat mission, in which Grant has to actually use like a raft to traverse the different. Of course, try to maneuver on the waterfall. Uh, check, check. Oh, Gennaro. Sorry, I did a hiccup. Gennaro. Oh, man, all that time. Gennaro. I'm very sorry, guys. carnage, huh? Well, at least it was on a small scale, but wait till later iterations. Oh, and another game that I actually played on the Super Nintendo was Jurassic Park 2: The Chaos Continues, and it's essentially but so it's actually a non-canon sequel, but the idea was that the island was taken over by Biosyn in an attempt to capture the dinosaurs. But so the game features a quasi recreation of the T-Rex chase, which is shown here. And Grant actually has to fight off the Rex as it runs after the Jeep. And I even saw a parody of this, of where, like, instead of the Rex, there was Pee Wee Herman that was added in. But yeah, so the game, it was it was very fun for its time. So the layout of Chaos Continues was Grant has to, of course, not only help contain the dinosaurs, but also try to fight off Biosyn in their takeover of Isla Nublar. But it has some very interesting missions. Like much of them kind of involves like having to fight off Biosyn soldiers that were attached to this barricade and having to take out a raptor nest that was inside of a volcano, which I believe may be Mount Sino. In that and so the game itself, it has you put into different missions, and after taking out Biosyn, you have the island kind of taken back by the dinosaurs themselves, and Engine has regained control. What a crummy weekend this has been. Oh, that reminds me. For those of you who aren't familiar with Weird Al Yankovic, he actually did a parody of a song using the topic of Jurassic Park, but there was another famous English actor called named Richard Harris, and he recorded a song called MacArthur Park, and the whole premise involved like a picnic having been gone to ruin because of rainfall. But so, I mean, the very song, the very parody from Yankovic is it's very funny. It incorporates bits and pieces of the Jurassic Park in terms of like the film. It even pokes fun like at, of course, Barney, the purple dinosaur. I mean, I swear that dinosaur really creeped me out. Well, my sister though, she was big into Barney. So cool. I mean, you would think that this would almost be like something at a display for like Universal or like any kind of department store. Just seeing Jurassic Park merch. But, I've never had really much in terms of Jurassic Park merch. I had like, at least like, besides like a Kung book, I had like two toys from the movies. One was like, of course, right at the very time of Lost World, I had a T-Rex hatchling and one of the hunters, Dieter Stark. But I mean, looking back now, I mean, the figures are still very, very collectible in terms of like, of course, because Kenner. I mean, like Kenner was like one of the big toy companies that were just that they were very big in terms of like, the whole movie tie-in arena, and that of course I have even had like a few Terminator figures at the time of when T2 3D was coming around, and they were just like redos of like from the classic Judgment Day toy line. But so now, of course, Hasbro, and then of course Mattel acquired the rights to the Jurassic toy copyright. Then when of course Jurassic World came out, I mean I may be wrong. I have to look back in this for the next commentary, and I'll be sure to let you all know about it. But this is like a very interesting moment because you actually see that Hammond is a good mannered person with good intentions. And that's a very deep moment because you actually feel bad for Hammond in terms like his dream is destroyed, and now he has to take responsibility for what happened because his family's out there, and with that he want he has to wake up to the fact that these dinosaurs, they can't be controlled now, they can't be contained, they essentially there I go again. I mean, I swear if this keeps up I'm going to have to make myself a like a tip jar for all the times that I say like a particular word repeatedly in my commentaries. But yeah, so if you have heard my commentaries and if I repeat something, let me know in the comments because I mean who knows, maybe I can put the put the little kitty pot and put it towards donating. Chews like one too. So gorgeous. I just. Another thing I remembered. The very concept of domesticated dinosaurs. But the idea was that there'd be an idea of pygmy dinosaurs that would be grown and that they could be raised as pets. And that's another realization that's coming right there. The very idea that there's been raptors escaping somehow, and then of course they found areas to nest. So it seems like the raptors ended up having found out about the motion sensor equipment, and then with that there was, of course, they would know about the sensors, and then they would try to, of course, hide out away from where the sensors could read, and then of course they would nest in those areas. But but that's where in containment they would know that the numbers were steadily climbing, and that with more dinosaurs having been born, they would leave the island. Sexy pose. But that's the major loophole right there, because I mean, even if the dinosaurs can't be supplied with lysine, there's always loopholes. Like in the instance of, like, of course, the local flora and fauna, and this was even covered in the Telltales game, which lysine was incorporated into the water supply, which the animals drink from. Yep, all the little nits and crannies to the whole system. so cool how they actually did that. And you can actually see the different variety of sizes in each of them. Like, you could determine like which ones are full grown, which ones are still juvenile. Yep. This was one of the locations that were filmed. Yummy. Interesting way to traumatize the kids more. Duh. So, yeah, the equipment that were featured in Jurassic Park, like we got the classic SPAS-12. I mean, that's like one of the iconic shotguns that were featured in popular media, because even the original Terminator incorporated one of those. Of course, having been like one-handed by Schwarzenegger. And then, of course, you can also see some of the M16s that were inside of the cabinet. And it would have been easier to say that would have been a little bit more PC, if you will. I don't know. But if Hammond would say that he was responsible for it, then he should have went. Because he it would be make sense to have at least some kind of redeeming quality that would encourage him to go out and at least take action. But so another major difference is that so Muldoon was supposed to, of course, live also, but of course got killed off. How many times did she actually have to jump over that? Oh, that's another thing that's like with all these different bloopers. There's that the whole thing of jumping over that one fallen trunk. But so the thing was is that it must have done like several different takes, and then that they tried to edit to make it look like she was trying to jump over different. I mean, if you look closely, you could tell it's the very same tree. Well, at least they didn't have to take the river. Yeah, but you make yourself to be a jerk. Honestly, it's. I mean, yeah, I know it's character evolution, but honestly, there's two kids that have been put through so much in just in the span of 24 hours. And oh yeah, going back to the original game, I forgot to mention that there was also like the indoor section where it has you put into like first person mode and you can actually travel, like the maintenance shed, visitor center, and I mean, even the ship. That's some, in my opinion, with that kind of fence, it looks very weak. But in later games, like I believe it's Jurassic World Evolution, it features upgrades to the fencing to where you can actually make them bigger and stronger, handling far more bigger and more ferocious creatures. This is a very tense moment. But oh nuts! Sorry, this is a very tense moment. Her reactions, they're just priceless. I mean, they come out of nowhere, like just how she screamed. Or what's left. So there was a deleted scene, so you can see that she's limping. But so she was having ended up tripping on Arnold's leg that would have been found somewhere nearby. I always thought this has like a bit of a recollection of Predator in a way. So here is the distraction method, which was, of course, shown by Grant earlier. You stare. She stares at. You stare at it, and it stares right back, and you get flanked. Nom nom nom. Yeah, I'm guessing that was the big one. Because it makes sense that it would make the first kill and take the first feed. For a second, he looked like Jack Nicholson. Ah, man. I gotta tell you, just the way this movie is going, so many ups and downs. Yeah. Uh, yeah, he got electrified, the poor kid. Uh, Interesting addition that they did also, like Grant using his bandana to bandage up Tim's hands. I mean, because the poor kid, I mean, makes sense because his hands got burned. Man, when I first saw this, I was going like, man, what a feast. What would be like what would be something you would definitely take from the court right there? Like if you had one meal up at Jurassic Park in the midst of all this chaos, what would you have to eat before you got off the island? So cool. Oh, and oh yeah, let's see. There were a couple of games that were like fan creations, and of course there were two that involved like reliving moments from the film. One of them was, of course, there I go repeating again. Okay, honestly, you guys got, if you guys ever decide to want to count, you gotta tell me, cause I'm gonna lose count. So the the fan recreations. There were two games that were done that I remember of. Like, one was the recreation of the T Rex breakout, and there's of course again, excuse me, but this moment, Raptors in the kitchen. That this was done. So the idea was that you have to maneuver around the kitchen, try to avoid detection of the raptors while using the kitchen. I've not seen a way of where you could actually escape from the kitchen because I mean, it's kind of like an endurance test in a way. You have to evade the raptors as much as possible. Oh. Another thing that I should point out is like the differences in the creatures that were featured. Because, like, in the novel, you have, like, of course, the velociraptors. But, but over the course of the development, they wanted to incorporate the look of the Deinonychus because it looked more intimidating as opposed to Velociraptor. Because one would think that the Deinonychus is about the same height as an average human, and they are more dangerous. And and I think it kind of works in the film universe. Like, what if like Deinonychus wasn't exactly found, and in place there was this version, or rather the like the actual Velociraptor species wasn't found, and that in this case it got swapped out with the Deinonychus counterpart. I wonder how, I wonder how that reflection actually worked because so it kind of seemed like it bounced off from one reflection and it kind of went toward. I don't know. I I I, I just couldn't get the whole idea because and look like Tim has sprained ankle too because it looked like he was trying to run and hop all at once. I don't know. I mean, he runs just fine, so why was he limping? Blooper. Tim, the dino expert, and Lex, the computer whiz. But the big thing is like how exactly did Lex acquire those hacking skills? Shotgun got jammed. So the endings, like, so there was the, oh, I didn't notice this, but at first I thought it looked like there was like grating that was kind of illuminating through and hitting the raptor. But then I noticed that after like recent viewings, is that the DNA sequencing code was kind of illuminating. It's very interesting in a way because it gives you the reminder that the dinosaurs were cloned, and it makes sense for the code to actually be kind of illuminating over the raptor to as kind of a reminder. So in the end, so so many differences. Like of course the Telltale Games incorporates like of course there were still people trapped on the island. Like of course the Biosyn spy, one of the park veterinarians, another geneticist, and even the veterinarian's daughter, and a couple of mercenaries. But so there was also something that was covered called Operation Clean Sweep, and it was basically trying to eliminate the brachiosaur population. Uh, how did Rex get in there in the first place? And that's how Rexy got her scars that will be featured in Jurassic World. In the words of Nostalgia Critic, I'm the T-Rex. I'm the T-Rex. So I hummed that out because I didn't want to swear, because some of you may be younger viewers and you didn't want to hear any curse words. So, but yeah, so in the book, Hammond actually got killed off by compies, and you would think it'd be just desserts, because that's a very evil man that got consumed by greed and hubris, that it'd be fitting to be destroyed by his own creations. But it just seems so sad to see this man who wants to make something that was so real end up being destroyed in front of him, and he paid the price for it. Now, like in the novel, there was also the very end of where Isla Nublar actually got bombed with napalm, thereby destroying the whole ecosystem as well as the animals aboard. But the very concept of like a theme park gone wrong, it's like it actually stems back to the Westworld approach. Bird motif again. Alright, that's the end of Jurassic Park, and I will present to you Lost World on the next video. So for those of you who are new to my channel, please subscribe, like the video, and leave a comment for any future requests, and you're free to... Oh, Kathleen Kennedy, oh no. Sorry I had to bring that up. Because the whole Star Wars backlash, but... So, once again, I am Brandon Pepler. Feel free to subscribe to my channel, give a like, and leave a comment of any possible requests for me in the future. And if you want to count off the number of times I've repeated a particular word or phrase, please do so, because I may hopefully put to where I may make like a donation gig. But, so anyway, this is Brandon Pepler, and I will talk to you next time, bring forth movie magic, mischief, and mayhem. Love and peace, folks.